Hi, I'm Anthony Mastromanco, and the topic that I wanted to talk about today was actually one that we recently got into a debate in my shop, and it's the long, fiery debate if violent video games cause violent behavior. If Pac-Man had affected us as kids, we'd all be running around in dark rooms, munching pills, and listening to repetitive electronic music. This is a quote from English comedian Marcus Birkstock. And I think he makes a valid point, in my opinion, on the long debate if violent video games actually cause violent behavior. He's really fired up at the release of Mortal Kombat in the 1990s, and the amount of violence in this game took the debate all the way up to Congress, which ultimately led to the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or ESRB, game rating system in 1994. There have also been many studies of if violent video games have effects on people, and in my opinion, I believe they don't. Just recently, researchers at Villanova University and Rutgers University conducted a study titled Violent Video Games and Real-World Violence, Rhetoric versus Data. In their study, researchers looked at popular video game releases and internet search trends and compared them to crime rates at the same time. If violent video games cause violent behavior, then violent crime should increase at the release of a violent game, right? And it actually turned out to be wrong. Some of the results were violent video game walkthrough searches online, and it related to an actual decrease in aggravated assaults and homicides. And then a big M-rated game release showed that homicides actually decreased around the same time. There was actually another study done published in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence where to see the effects of violent games in high-risk children with symptoms of depression and attention deficit disorder. Dr. Christopher Ferguson of Texas A&M and Dr. Cheryl Olsen studied 377 American children with an average age of 13. Their findings were that violent games actually had a slight calming effect and helped reduce aggressive and bullying behavior. The researchers stated in the results, though, it should not be generalized to extreme cases like mass shootings. Regarding this, Ferguson stated, statistically speaking, it would actually be more unusual if a youth delinquent or shooter did not play violent video games, given that a majority of youth and young men play such games at least occasionally. However, there was a recent study conducted at Oxford where researchers measured aggression versus competence in a game. They took a modern version of the game Half-Life 2, one non-violent, one violent, and one had a tutorial and one did not. And then they distributed them out to players. They found out that the players who played the version, regardless if it's violent or not, without the tutorial, displayed more anger. They narrowed down that the great amount of aggression comes from the individual not performing well in the game. Dr. Przybylski, who ran the study, stated, "This need to master the game was far more significant than whether the game contained violent material. If the structure of the game or the design of the controls for its enjoyment, it is not the violent content that seems to drive feelings of aggression." As you can see, there are studies suggesting that violent video games do not cause violent behavior. There doesn't seem to be a link that video games have the ability to make people violent, but recent studies have shown that video games can cause aggressive behavior. The fact that people lose is what causes the anger and not the actual content. As Paul Tassi, a journalist at Forbes.com put, losing or being bad at anything, gaming, sports, Scrabble, etc., can be rage-inducing depending on your personality. It's up to the individual person or parent to keep things in check.